a motion to suspend the rules relating to H.R. 2954 be extended to 80 minutes.
Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will report. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2954, the Securing a Strong Retirement Act of 2022, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2954, a bill to increase retirement savings, simplify and clarify retirement plan rules, and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the order of the House today, the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Neal, and the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady, will each control 40 minutes. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, H.R. 2954 will help all Americans successfully save for a secure retirement by expanding coverage and increasing retirement savings, simplifying the current retirement system, and protecting Americans and their retirement accounts. Retirement security has consistently been one of my top priorities as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. Too many workers in this nation reach retirement age without having the savings they need. In fact, I hope people will listen to this number. It is estimated that up to 50% of the individuals in America who go to work every single day do not have enrollment in a qualified retirement plan. That means those households are at risk of not having enough to maintain their living standards in retirement. We need to do more to encourage workers to begin planning for retirement earlier, and we need to make savings considerably easier. Last Congress, Mr. Brady and I worked together on a bipartisan basis to do that by enacting the Secure Act, one of the most significant retirement bills to become law in well over a decade. Thanks to the Secure Act, 4 million more Americans are now able to save for retirement through their employers, and as many as 700,000 new retirement accounts will be formed. And last year, we built on this progress with the passage into law of my legislation, the Butch-Lewis Act. After years of fighting for a solution to the multi-employer pension crisis, the Butch-Lewis Act saved multi-employer pension plans from insolvency and secured the financial future of over 1 million workers and their families as retirees who had played by the rules and made responsible saving decisions. Think of that, couple what we're about to do today with the guarantee of Social Security, and we will help to improve the opportunity for members of the American family to have a secure retirement. More work needs to be done, and that's why I'm pleased that H.R. 2954, the Securing a Strong Retirement Act of 2022, is before us today. This bipartisan legislation, and bipartisan, let me thank Mr. Brady again for his good work on this legislation as well, that will expand automatic enrollment in 401k plans by requiring 401k, 403b, and simple plans to automatically enroll participants upon becoming eligible, with the ability for employees to opt out of coverage, which I think, by the way, is not the best idea, but we do provide that option. Expansion of automatic enrollment will significantly increase participation in retirement savings plans at work. H.R. 2954 also enhances the startup credit, making it easier for small businesses to sponsor a retirement plan. And the legislation increases the required minimum distribution age to 75, and it indexes the catch-up contribution limits for individual retirement accounts. These changes will make it easier for American families to prepare for a financially secure retirement. On a related note, I think it is important to highlight that U.S.-defined contribution plans have created a unique reservoir of capital in the innovation economy. Retirement plans are investing in areas such as tech, financial services, digital commerce, and biotech. That means that workers' retirement assets are directly tying middle-class workers to our national innovation economy. That certainly is a win-win for all of us. I'm really pleased that Ranking Member Brady and I were able to come together on a bipartisan basis to develop this important legislation. Once again, it passed the Ways and Means Committee unanimously. Our efforts have resulted in an excellent product that has broad support from organizations representing diverse interests, including retirees, charitable organizations, financial services providers, police officers, small businesses, and employers. The list of specific supporters is too long to read, but we can start with the American Red Cross, AARP, and many others which we will submit for the record. Hundreds of groups have endorsed this plan. Let's work together to expand retirement savings in America. I urge our colleagues to support this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves his time. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman from Texas.
So thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to join with my friend, Chairman Rich Neal, in jointly reintroducing Secure 2.0, which will help hardworking Americans approach retirement with both confidence and dignity. For 5 years now, members of the Ways and Means Committee have worked tirelessly together to ensure Americans have the resources to save for a secure retirement. A lot of hard work and negotiations has got us to this point, and I'm grateful to Chairman Neal for his commitment to get this bill across the finish line and to the President's desk. It's important to remember how far we've come in our joint efforts to help Americans better prepare for their long-term financial goals. Following the historic rewrite of our tax code, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, Republicans moved toward building on this success for years to come. That happened when Republicans and Democrats worked together to develop an act that's setting every community up for retirement enhancement act, known as SECURE. The most significant retirement legislation to become law in over a decade and a half. We made it easier for Main Street businesses to offer retirement plans to their workers by easing administrative burdens, cutting down on unnecessary and often costly paperwork. SECURE Act made significant improvements to our country's retirement system, and today we'll do even more. A recent AARP survey found that rising prices are taking a big toll on workers, making it difficult to cover everyday expenses or save for the future. In fact, with 40-year high inflation, nearly a quarter of workers reported their financial situation is worse today than it was last year. The study also found that nearly 40% of workers say they have no emergency savings, with 1 out of 5 reporting they have nothing saved for retirement, nothing. Both groups peg rising prices of everyday goods as the biggest barrier to planning for their financial future. Ensuring Americans have the resources they need for a prosperous retirement is a bipartisan priority. And as with American families' paychecks falling further behind to rising prices, it's really never been more important for Congress to help workers get back on track with their retirement plans. With this bill, we build on the landmark provisions in the SECURE Act, enabling more workers, especially those of low income and modest income, to begin saving earlier and giving them peace of mind as they plan for the future. Our bill, Secure 2.0, improves workers' long-term financial well-being by helping more Americans save for retirement at every stage of their life. Secure 2.0 contains more than 20 provisions sponsored or co-sponsors by Republicans and Democrats in standalone legislation. By providing flexibility, for example, we make it easier for local businesses to tailor retirement plans to best fit the needs of their workers. These reforms help Americans not only save earlier in their careers, but helps families save longer as well. We expand access to workplace retirement by increasing the incentives for businesses, especially small businesses, to create new plans or join groups of plans while sharing the cost of administration. To further help small businesses shoulder the burden of creating a new plan, our bill matches employer contributions with a new business tax credit. That can help a small business match up to the first $1,000 in matching contributions for that worker. For those Americans who are further along in their career or already in retirement, our bill raises the amount these workers can contribute to catch up on their retirement savings as they near retirement, doubling it to $10,000 a year. And because we want Americans to save throughout their lifetime, together we increase the age at which retirement plan distributions become mandatory to age 75 over time from 72 today. These changes are especially important because many workers find themselves making more at the end of their careers and are open to focusing on retirement. Those already in retirement often worry about the effects of mandatory taxable distributions on their long-term financial plans. Another recent study by Edward Jones and Morning Consult found that 57% of Americans who prioritize paying off a student loan are now behind on their schedule and saving for retirement. Our bill allows employers to essentially match their workers' student loan repayments with contributions to their worker retirement plan. So this means for workers struggling to make ends meet under crushing student debt, rising prices, they're able to tackle both paying off their debt and getting help in working toward a secure retirement. Again, I want to thank Chairman Neal, the members of the Ways and Means Committee from both parties for their long-term and diligent efforts. Together, we will ensure more hardworking Americans are confident in their retirement. With that, Madam Speaker, I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, Mr. Thompson, a real champion of retirement savings.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Neal and Ranking Member Brady, for your hard work on this important piece of legislation. The Securing a Strong Retirement Act of 2021 is bipartisan legislation that gives workers the tools they need to retire with the financial stability they deserve and work so hard to obtain. Importantly, this legislation allows individuals to pay down a student loan instead of contributing to a 401k plan while still receiving an employer match in their retirement plan. I've heard from thousands of individuals in my district who are facing an overwhelming amount of student loan debt. These are people who are struggling to start their careers while also trying to pay off these loans. The Secure Act provides the opportunity to make payments on their student loans now while also investing in their future. I'm proud to support this legislation that we're hearing today, and I thank you for this great bipartisan bill that you've put behind us.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I yield back to balance my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves his time. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pleased to yield 1 minute to the Republican leader of the Trade Subcommittee, gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Smith.
The gentleman from Nebraska is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank Mr. Brady for yielding. I'm glad we are finally considering Secure 2.0, which will help every American family save. The Savers Credit improvements in this bill will help low-income families start putting aside money for the future, certainly a key to getting out of poverty. The enhanced credit for small employers offering retirement plans will help more businesses offer plans, an important factor in recruiting and retaining talent. New tools, like allowing employers to match workers' student loan repayments with retirement contributions, eliminate the need for young workers to choose between paying their debt or saving for retirement. And provisions like enhanced catch-up contributions and delaying required minimum distributions until age 75 will help older workers have more control as they near retirement. This is a strong package for savers of all ages. I thank the chairman and our ranking member for their efforts to get this to the floor. I certainly urge support, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Connecticut, a real champion of retirement savings, including all things Social Security, Mr. Larson, for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Chairman Neal and Leader Brady. What an outstanding example of bipartisan cooperation, but especially as it relates to what is amounted to a financial retirement crisis. This clearly will help aid in the work that's already been done by Chairman Neal with regard to both the Secures Act and the Butch-Lewis Act. But this even adds more flexibility and also provides an automatic opportunity for people to put money forward. I went to the Aetna School of Insurance, and they said there's 3 legs on this table. Those are personal savings, pension, and Social Security. This helps address the pension issue as no one can. And again, I want to commend Mr. Neal and Mr. Brady for their efforts and point out that we have another leg on that stool. It's called Social Security that Congress hasn't addressed in more than 50 years. And commend the chairman as we go through the process of markup on that as well, and yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves his time. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Schweikert.
The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for a minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker Pro Tem and Mr. Brady and Mr. Chairman. It's neat to see us actually have something that we're all doing together. A bit of trivia. At the end of this decade, 22% of our population will be 65 or older. Retirement security is, besides just the moral imperative, it's going to be the financial, it's going to be the driver of almost all sovereign debt. And look, there's a couple dozen provisions in this legislation. In many ways, they look like tinkering, but they come together. If you happen to have a profession where you have a mandatory retirement age that might be 60, 65, the ability to do catch-ups, to be a small business and knowing what you can contribute to your 401k when you're doing your taxes instead of trying to guess at the end of the year. These things all come together. But we're also going to have to look forward in the coming year and deal with the reality of what did inflation do to the cost of future retirement. The taxation on really gain that isn't purchasing power but is inflation. But this is a terrific first step.
The gentleman's
and it's neat to have
time
us do
has
something
expired.
together. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Another real champion of retirement savings is the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kind, who I recognize for 1 minute.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the chairman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of securing a strong retirement act, or Secure .20, as it's being referred to. This follows on the heels of passage of Secure roughly 2 years ago, to try to make it easier for individuals to save for their retirement security, especially for small businesses to offer retirement savings plans for their employees, which has traditionally been a big black hole when it comes to individual savings. I'm proud that a few of the provisions in this legislation have been based on legislation I've been working on throughout the years. With my friend and colleague from Pennsylvania, Mike Kelly, we had offered legislation that would extend the startup tax credit to small employers that join multi-employer plans. Again, with Mr. Kelly, this allows 403B plans to participate in MEPs, including pooled employer plans, or PEPs, as they're known under the Secure Act. And then finally, there's been an anomaly in the tax code that we're addressing, in part, trying to make it easier for S corporations to be able to convert to an ESOP model, or an employee share ownership plan. A very good business model, but we're trying to bring that on par with C corporations. This has been a great, strong bipartisan effort, and I encourage my colleagues.
30 more seconds, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman is yielded how many additional seconds? 30? The gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This has been a great bipartisan effort in committee. And again, I thank the chairman and the ranking member for creating the environment, not just with today's legislation, but the previous Secure Act that we passed roughly 2 years ago, and the ongoing work that we will have. Because my friend from Arizona is right. With 70 million baby boomers beginning their massive retirement, we have to figure out ways to make it easier for individuals to save for their own retirement and for future generations to participate and get a head start. I believe this legislation accomplished it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker, please yield 1.5 minutes to the gentleman from Peoria, Mr. LaHood.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of Secure 2.0. And as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, I want to thank Chairman Neal and Ranking Member Brady for their bipartisan work on this legislation that will help workers save for retirement at all stages of their career and protect American futures. This bill includes 2 key provisions that I was proud to work on: Retirement Parity for Student Loans Act and the Public Service Retirement Fairness Act. The Retirement Parity for Student Loans Act allows workers to make student loan payments while receiving employer matching contributions into their retirement plan. This will allow individuals to pay down student loan debt and save for retirement at the same time. The Public Service Retirement Fairness Act creates parity between the public and private sectors, ensuring public sector and nonprofit retirement savings programs have the same access to low-cost investments as private sector retirement plans. Secure 2.0 supports workers at all stages to save for retirement, helps small businesses create retirement plan options, and builds on bipartisan success of the Secure Act passed last Congress. I want to thank my colleagues that worked in a bipartisan effort for their work on this vital legislation, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes. I yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Pleased to yield, Madam Speaker, 1 minute to the gentlelady from California, another real champion of retirement savings, Congresswoman Chu.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise in strong support of H.R. 2954, the Securing a Strong Retirement Act. This bill continues the work the Ways and Means Committee began 2 years ago with the Secure Act to expand access to retirement savings and enhance retirement readiness for millions of Americans across the country. I'm especially proud of provisions drawn from my bill, the Encouraging Americans to Save Act that strengthens the Savers Credit. This credit provides millions of low and middle income taxpayers with an incentive to save for retirement each year, but currently it's split into 3 tiers of 10, 20, or 50%. This legislation not only directs the IRS to promote the credit to more communities, including those with limited English proficiency, but also makes it both simpler and more generous by setting it at 50% for all eligible taxpayers. I urge a yes vote on this bill, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves his time. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute. Gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Estes.
The gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, today I rise in support of Secure 2.0. Since my time as Kansas State Treasurer and as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, increased retirement security for Americans of all ages has been a major policy priority for me. Building on our great success with the Secure Act in 2019, Secure 2.0 includes a number of provisions for new employees and near retirees, like my bill to improve the required minimum distribution rules and my bill that would make it easier for employees to save for retirement and pay off their student loans. Employees who are part of an employee stock ownership plan, like the Kansas workers I've talked to at Inland Truck Parts, Conco, and others, benefit from the bipartisan ESOP provisions in Secure 2.0. The bill also ensures public sector and nonprofit retirement programs have the same access to low-cost retirements, just like for-profit plans. And it allows individuals who have to decide to pay down a student loan instead of contributing to a 401k can still receive an employee match for their retirement plans. These common sense retirement security reforms deserve to be law, and I strongly encourage my colleagues to vote yes on Secure 2.0. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, another real champion of Social Security and retirement, Congressman Panetta, for 1 minute.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of H.R. 2954, the Secure 2.0. This bipartisan legislation would make it easier for something that's been getting harder and harder: saving for retirement for workers and working families. Now, I commend the chairman and the ranking member for their very, very hard work, and I thank them for including 2 of my bipartisan bills in Secure 2.0. My Public Service Retirement Fairness Act ensures that retirement savings programs for nonprofits in the public sector have the same access to low-cost investments as private sector plans. This bill would greatly benefit many teachers and nonprofit employees who serve in my district and also have to spend an inordinate amount on housing by providing them access to affordable retirement plans. My Family Attribution Modernization Act that I worked on with my good friend Jody Arrington is also included in Secure 2.0. This bill would modernize outdated family attribution rules so that women-owned businesses and other small businesses in community property states like California have more flexibility and independence.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I yield the gentleman another 30 seconds, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman from California, an additional 30 seconds.
In closing, Madam Speaker, these bills, along with many, many other provisions in this bipartisan legislation, are common sense solutions for the futures and the retirements of working families. That is why, Madam Speaker, I urge a yes vote for Secure 2.0. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves his time, and the gentleman from Texas is now recognized.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute. The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank Mr. Brady and also Chairman Neal. I think we should mark this down March 29th, 2022, the day that the people who were elected and came to represent our folks back home actually got together and did something on the House floor that was good for everybody in America. And we are not going firing bullets back and forth at each other. We're saying, you know what? Isn't it great when we work together what we can get done? So Mr. Kind and I were walking over together, and he said, you know, Mike, well, I'm really happy this happened because there's a lot in there that we've both worked on, and it looks like it's going to put a little more gold in our retirees' pocket when they hit their golden years. But this is one thing the press will never cover. They'll never say, my God, these Republicans and Democrats got together for American workers to make sure that they go into retirement and lay their head in the pillow at night and sleep because they know they have enough to get through the rest of their life. What a moment. What a moment. I got to tell you, I'm so proud to be part of this. Mr. Brady, thank you so much. Mr. Neal, thank you so much. And for both sides of the aisle, why don't we use this as an example as we move forward, as what the heck we're supposed to do for the people who sent us here to represent them. So thank you especially. I want to thank Kara Getz.
Time has expired.
Give me 10 seconds. That's all I want.
The gentleman's
additional 30
recognized
seconds.
for an additional
All right. So
30
Kara Getz
seconds.
from Chairman Neal's staff and Payson Peabody from the ranking member, Mr. Brady's staff, for working together in this. You all get so little credit for all the midnight oil you burn to make sure that we can get legislation done. Thank you so much, not just from me, but for all the retirees and the future retirees we have in this country. Thanks so much, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam Speaker, might I inquire of the ranking member how many more speakers he might have?
Mr. Chairman, we have a few more.
Gentleman
I
from
reserve the balance of my time.
reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Great thing. I should have said just a few more. Madam Speaker, I'm really proud to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from North Carolina, Dr. Murphy.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for a minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in support of Secure Act 2.0. When our military members pledge a commitment to the United States, we promise in return to care for them and their families. As a proud representative of close to 90,000 veterans in North Carolina, I'm committed to supporting strong legislation that improves the lives of our veterans and their families. When service members change base assignments, their spouses often relocate with them, putting their own careers at stake and on hold. The Secure Act prioritizes military family retirements by providing a tax credit for small employers that make more benefit plans available for military spouses. Incentivizing job creators to hire and retain military spouses is an important step to strengthening military family retirement savings. I am proud of the bipartisan effort by the Ways and Means Committee to lead the charge to support our military families who so often face many uphill challenges in attainment and retirement security. We must always fight for those who have given us so much to remain our safety, to keep our safety. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas reserves his time. The gentleman from Massachusetts
I
is
continue to
recognized.
reserve, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you. First, Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to introduce to the record a number of letters and documents in support of Secure 2.0, among a litany of letters advocating for swift passage. There are 4 I'd like to introduce. These letters are led by the employee-owned S Corporations of America, the American Benefits Council, the American Retirement Association, and the Investment Company Institute, all of which were invaluable members in crafting this bipartisan legislation.
Order.
And with that, Mr. Chairman, I am prepared for my closing remarks.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Madam Speaker, Mr. Brady, we're waiting on one more speaker.
Great.
If we could, Mr. Brady has anybody else he wants to thank, that would be great.
The gentleman from Texas.
Never make that offer to a sitting member of Congress. Madam Speaker, yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
So this has been awfully good work on behalf of bipartisan members of Congress on an issue they believe in. But Chairman Neal and I are both blessed to have incredibly hardworking personnel and professional team. And I just, Madam Speaker, want to thank Payson Peabody and Derek Tyre from our tax subcommittee team for the work that they put in, along with Chairman Neal's folks, to develop this legislation, fine-tune the legislation, make the adjustment as it comes to the floor, and again, put it in the format and with the right to designs that we think will do great things for the American people, American workers. With that, I reserve.
The gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to submit for the record a letter that has been signed by 50 different charities in support of this legislation.
Without objection.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. And let me also include a letter from the AARP supporting this legislation, Madam Speaker.
Without objection.
As you can tell, Madam Speaker, I'm reaching. Are you prepared to close, Mr. Brady?
Yes, sir.
We'll go to Mr. Brady, and then I'll close from there. Thank you.
The gentleman from Texas is now recognized. The gentleman from Massachusetts has reserved his time. The gentleman from Texas.
Great. Madam Speaker, yield myself as much time as I may consume. So I think one of the things I'm most proud of in this legislation began almost 2 years ago. After the passage of the Secure Act, Chairman Neal and I sat down on the floor talking about what more we can do to help people save for retirement. What we both talked about is what everyone knows exists, the savings gap, and what little is being done to address it. And this is the gap of how many Americans will spend their lifetime and save virtually nothing. And when it's time to retire, you know, their retirement isn't in their hands. You know, it is all owed to government or other help. And we decided we would do the hard work to try to engage the millions of Americans who we know who they are. They don't make lots of money. It's low income or moderate income, usually work for a very small business. They are the toughest to be able to begin getting into that savings environment. So we designed this bill to really focus on those who've not saved in the past, and unless we do something differently, we're not going to be saving for the future. And so that's why so much of this bill is designed around them. That's why we help small businesses set up the plans. And here's what we know, Madam Speaker. To have secure retirement, we need to make sure a business offers a plan. Secondly, we need to make sure that worker is part of that plan. Thirdly, we need to have those contributions matched. And fourthly, you need to save more over time as your income increases. This bill really takes the significant steps to make sure small businesses are offering those plans and get help matching those first $1,000. We use the Savers Credit, which is pretty unused these days, and muscle it up and make it more available to help those low income provide those first dollars. And then we make the changes so it is easier for small businesses to either start their own plan or pool with others, as we did in the Secure Act, all of which we think are the elements to close that savers gap and give Americans who really had no chance to save an opportunity to do that. That's what, in my view, is the importance of this legislation, why I'm proud of the work. Chairman Neal, the Republican and Democrat members of our committee worked together beautifully on this bill. I think this is an important one that I urge the Senate to take up and pass as well. With that, at this point, Madam Chairman, I understand I'll be yielding to the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Allen, to control the remainder of my time. Is that correct? Great, thank you.
Without objection, the gentleman from Georgia will be recognized.
Great, thank you.
The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Let me begin by yielding myself as much time as I might consume, as well as we will proceed to the next committee. Thank you. Oftentimes in this chamber, you will hear the phrase transformative. Sometimes it's hyperbolic, but on this occasion, this is transformative legislation. We have fundamentally changed the opportunities for retirement for the American family for millions and millions of people. And I want to acknowledge the work of the ranking member on this, Mr. Brady, because his input has been invaluable in helping to get to this moment. I'm really proud of this work. We are helping Americans prepare for a secure retirement. The catch-up provisions alone are startling in this legislation. Remember, there are a lot of people in America who are trying to simultaneously educate their children and save for retirement. It's a real challenge. So the catch-up provisions here mean that if people wish to work longer or begin to set aside more prescribed dollars for retirement because they couldn't do it during certain years of paying college expenses, we provide that opportunity. But this has been meaningful for members on both sides. I've heard members on the Republican side point out their contributions to it, and they're entirely correct. We, on our side, have also included Mr. Davis's legislation that ensures workers with student loans don't miss out on 401k matching contributions, Representative Murphy's legislation to increase the required minimum distribution age to 75 is here as well. We created a higher catch-up contribution amount for those years just before retirement, a provision particularly important for pilots who have a mandatory retirement age. That was a priority of Representatives Sanchez and Pascrell. Mr. Kine's bills have been included. His legislation fixing a problem with startup credits and multiple employer plans is here as well. Secure 2.0 contains Representative Chu's legislation that would enhance the Savers credit, which was also a priority for Representative Sewell. We've included Representative Panetta's legislation that provides 403B custodial accounts that are permitted to invest in collective investment trusts, as well as his legislation reforming family attribution rules. And we've included Representative Sewell's legislation to reduce by 1 year the period of service requirement for long-term part-time workers to participate in 401k plans. This provision is particularly important for women who tend to work part-time more frequently than men. Mr. Swazi contributed to this legislation that would direct Treasury to issue regulations addressing a glitch with respect to insurance-dedicated exchange-traded funds. Mr. Byers' legislation is included. That was important to the charitable community and would, among other things, index the inflation rate for annual IRA charitable distribution limits. The bill includes Representative Moore's legislation that would provide penalty-free withdrawals from retirement plans for individuals in case of domestic abuse. We've included Representative Evans' legislation directing the Labor Department to update its disclosure rules to allow better comparisons amongst investments to aid participant decision-making. And finally, we've included Representative Pascrell's legislation that would allow first-time responders to exclude service-related connected disability pension plans and payments from their gross income after they reach retirement age. That also touches upon Representative Higgins' ESOP Fairness Act. Mr. Brady noted earlier, and let me reinforce the exceptional work of the Ways and Means Committee staff members on this occasion. I have said many times before, we are blessed with amongst the brightest and smartest and hardest working staff members in Congress. Let me thank Maylon Rogers for her work, and Kara Getz, who's been integral to the development of not only this legislation, but the Secure Act and the Butch-Lewis Act as well, which both became law. The Secure Act was one of the most significant retirement opportunities, and this legislation will become law, I hope, in the near future. Let's not wait another decade to enact the important provisions of this legislation. This bill goes a long way in addressing this country's retirement crisis. And I want to point out something I said earlier. Half the people that get up and go to work every day in America are not in a qualified retirement plan. We need to continue to address that issue. This is important legislation. I know it will pass. I think the last time that this legislation came to the floor, all but 4 members of this chamber voted for that legislation. So with that, I want to thank Mr. Brady again for the good work of him and his staff, and I now yield my time to Chairman Scott and ask unanimous consent that he be permitted to control the remainder of time.
Without objection. So we are restarting the Education Committee and Labor portion of this debate. The gentleman from Virginia has 24 and a half minutes, and the gentleman from Georgia has 24 and a half minutes. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentleman from Virginia.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 2954, the Securing a Strong Retirement Act of 2022, which incorporates the Bipartisan Retirement Improvement Savings Enhancement Act, or RISE Act, that the Committee on Education and Labor approved by voice vote last fall. And I want to thank the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Neal, for his hard work in incorporating this legislation in the Secure 2.0. Our committee was able to reach a bipartisan agreement on the RISE Act, thanks in large part to the leadership of the chairman and the ranking member of our Health, Employment, and Labor Pension Subcommittee, the gentleman from California, Mr. DeSaulnier, and the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Allen. I want to recognize and thank them for their important contributions to this bill. American workers deserve a decent wage and the ability to retire with dignity and security. Unfortunately, far too many Americans are working later in their lives and still relying on the next paycheck to cover monthly expenses. This legislation makes meaningful improvements in our retirement system, helping Americans prepare for and achieve the secure retirement that they deserve. I'm particularly pleased that this bill incorporates several key priorities authored by a Committee on Education and Labor members. For example, it includes legislation sponsored by the gentlelady from Oregon, the chair of the Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Human Resources, Ms. Bonamici, which creates an online retirement lost and found database at the Department of Labor to help workers locate their hard-earned retirement savings as they move from job to job. According to the Government Accountability Office, more than 25 million people who changed jobs between 2004 and 2014 left behind one or more retirement accounts. Establishing this kind of database at the Department of Labor is necessary and long overdue. The bill includes legislation sponsored by the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Manning, which reduces barriers preventing part-time workers from participating in their employers' retirement savings plans. This simple change will benefit many part-time workers, particularly women. And it also includes legislation sponsored by the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mervan, requiring the Department of Labor to review and update guidance from the mid-1990s regarding pension risk transfers. Importantly, Madam Speaker, this bill offers an opportunity to send a message to workers and retirees across the country that their retirement security is a critical priority for every member of this House. So I urge my colleagues to support the bill and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman from Georgia.
I rise today in support of H.R. 2954, which includes the text of the Education and Labor Committee's Bipartisan Retirement Improvement and Savings Enhancement RISE Act, H.R. 5891. A bill that I was proud to co-sponsor with the distinguished chairman of the Education and Labor Committee and Republican leader Fox. This bipartisan legislation is a much-needed push towards modernization that our country's retirement system needs. Our economy has evolved, and so have the ways Americans plan for retirement. Neither employers nor employee benefits plans fit into the same cookie-cutter policies they did when the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974 was first enacted. The RISE Act and the H.R. 2954 include reforms that will benefit America's workforce and job creators. Worker access to employer-sponsored retirement plans has improved over the last 3 decades, and participation has grown. Today, more workers are saving more in employer-sponsored plans. However, there remains room for improvement, as too many Americans still lack access to these benefits. This legislation is a major step towards providing reasonable solutions to solve the problems hindering Americans from being able to save for a secure future. Building on the Secure Act of 2019, the RISE Act and H.R. 2954 expand multiple and pooled employer plans, giving charities, educational institutions, and nonprofit organizations the opportunity to offer affordable retirement plans. Expanding pooled employer plans gives small businesses access to more affordable plans by allowing them to band together, decreasing the cost and burdens associated with sponsoring a plan and providing more Americans with an opportunity to save. Allowing small businesses and nonprofits the opportunity to offer competitive retirement plans so they can attract workers is extremely important, as the labor shortage has hit them the hardest. Additionally, the RISE Act and H.R. 2954 will allow employers to offer small financial incentives to employees for participating in a retirement plan. This will help encourage employees to start preparing for retirement earlier in their careers, which is vital for employee contributions to earn years of compounding benefits for their retirement accounts. Finally, this bill expands access to retirement savings for part-time workers and who otherwise would be limited from participating in the employer plan. Removing barriers to saving ensures more Americans have a secure and self-sufficient retirement. Red tape and unnecessary barriers must not keep employees from building a strong retirement. The RISE Act and H.R. 2954 also ease the burden of administering retirement accounts by removing unnecessary disclosure requirements. The legislation directs the Department of Labor, Treasury, and the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation to simplify reporting and disclosure regulations, streamline the collection of contributions to pooled employer plans, and update benchmarking guidelines to accommodate a broader selection of plan investments. Importantly, retirement professionals themselves are in support of the RISE Act. Organizations like the American Benefits Council, the Insured Retirement Institute, the American Retirement Association, and the Spark Institute are supportive of this legislation. Workers and plan sponsors alike can see that the RISE Act will make common sense reforms and improve the lives and futures of the American worker. The RISE Act offers creative and practical solutions to the problems in our retirement system. As legislators, we must take action to tackle issues that affect the daily lives of our constituents. And as a businessman, I know firsthand the issues that are affecting American workers that can be improved upon. This legislation will improve the retirement security for millions of Americans. I urge my colleagues to join in support, and I look forward to its passage in the House and for these reforms to be ultimately signed into law. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Georgia reserves his time. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to a distinguished member of the Committee on Education and Labor, the gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Manning.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank Chairman Scott for yielding me this time. Madam Chair, I rise in strong support of the Securing a Strong Retirement Act. Today, too many workers face difficulty saving for retirement, and even for those who have access to retirement plans, it can be difficult to grow and protect hard-earned savings. There are roughly 55 million Americans who lack access to a retirement savings plan at work, with many lacking any retirement savings at all. This is particularly true for women. Approximately 50% of women ages 55 to 66 have no personal retirement savings, compared to 44% of men, and only 22% of women have $100,000 or more in savings, compared to 30% of men. Women are also more likely than men to work in part-time jobs that don't qualify for a retirement plan, and are more likely than men to quit work, transfer jobs, or interrupt their careers to care for family members, resulting in lower retirement savings. This is why I'm proud to have my bill, the Improving Part-Time Workers' Access to Retirement Act, included in this important legislation. This provision will make it easier for long-term part-time workers to access retirement by shortening the amount of time they are required to work for their employer in order to participate in their 401k plan. This will have an important impact on the ability of women and low-wage workers to be able to save for retirement. As a member of the House Education and Labor Committee and a strong supporter of college affordability, I am also pleased that this legislation will allow borrowers the option to pay down their student loans while still receiving an employer match in their retirement plan. This common-sense approach to retirement savings will help nearly 46 million Americans facing student loan debt become more financially stable while overcoming the barriers too many in our country face upon graduating, like advancing in their career, buying a home, or starting a family. Secure 2.0 will help workers save more longer, improve flexibility and protections for Americans' retirement accounts, and eliminate some of the barriers small businesses face in providing comprehensive retirement options to their employees. These are bipartisan, common-sense provisions that will better serve workers and employers across our country. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this critical legislation. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia reserves his time. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my good friend, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg.
Gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleague from Florida. From Georgia. I rise in support of the Securing a Strong Retirement Act. As an entire generation moves closer to retirement, we must ensure our laws are up to date to help Americans achieve their retirement goals. Last Congress, we passed the Secure Act, which made significant improvements to our nation's retirement policies. Today, we're building upon that success to ensure Americans can live their golden years with dignity. I would like to highlight one provision of this bill, which incorporates a bipartisan policy I have long championed with my colleague, Representative Sablan. Our provision will reduce the administrative costs for employers sponsoring retirement plans for their employees. Often, businesses will cite financial resources as a key reason for not offering retirement benefits. The Retirement Plan Modernization Act would ease the administrative burdens on employers, especially small businesses, enabling more small businesses to offer retirement benefits and ensure employees are not needlessly paying higher fees. I would like to thank both the Education and Labor and Ways and Means Committee for including text from our bill, H.R. 2954. Madam Speaker, the Securing a Strong Retirement Act will enhance opportunities for Americans to save for retirement. I urge all members to support it, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to a distinguished member of the Committee on Education and Labor, the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mervan.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you to Chairman Scott for allowing me the time. I rise today in support of H.R. 2954, the Securing a Strong Retirement Act. I am grateful for the bipartisan collaboration to produce this legislation that makes common sense improvements to our nation's retirement system. There are far too many challenges today that prevent workers from having access to secure retirement benefits and information to protect their hard-earned savings. I also appreciate the inclusion of the provisions of my legislation, the Pension Risk Transfer Accountability Act, which requires the Department of Labor to review existing rules on pension risk transfers. A promise made should be a promise kept for all workers and retirees. I encourage all my colleagues to support this legislation to further ensure that workers can retire with dignity, security, and peace of mind. Thank you, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from Virginia reserves his time. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to another good friend, the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Keller.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Georgia. I rise in support of the Securing a Strong Retirement Act. As part of the Education and Labor Committee, our goal is to provide employers and employees with opportunities to access a safe, effective, and productive workplace. We also work on policy that encourages people to save for retirement and provides opportunities for their families. This bill accomplishes both by improving employer-sponsored benefits to help workers make good decisions that will serve them well in the future. The bill increases access to retirement accounts, lowers the cost of administering programs for small businesses, and provides incentives for workers to voluntarily put money towards savings. It also requires the Department of Labor to review existing reporting and disclosure requirements, making them easier to comply with and understand. Updates the dollar threshold for automatic distributions by plans to participants, which was last updated in 1997.
streamlines the collection of contributions to pooled employer plans, and updates benchmarking guidelines to accommodate different investment products. The bill also adds tax incentives for small businesses that offer employee stock ownership plans, a great tool and benefit for employees to have a stake with their employer. The Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974 set a foundation for today's policies, but the measure needs to be updated to reflect the 21st century workforce. I urge my colleagues to support this important measure and look forward to this legislation becoming law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia reserves his time. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to a distinguished member of the Committee on Ways and Means and chair of its Subcommittee on Trade, the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate the chairman's courtesy in permitting me to speak on this issue and his leadership on an issue that concerns us all. We're facing a retirement crisis in this country. Too many people do not have adequate resources. The aging population is exploding, and we've seen financial uncertainty in the midst of the COVID crisis in particular. I am pleased that we're able to come together as a Congress on a bipartisan basis to advance this legislation. Recently, we watched people come together dealing with trade relations with Russia, ratcheting up sanctions on a bipartisan basis, and this is another strong signal, I think. I also appreciate Chairman Neal for his leadership in spearheading the Secure 2.0, which takes the Oregon auto enrollment model to the federal level and provides new incentives to promote and expand employee stock ownership plans, ESOPs. I have long supported ESOPs as a successful model that provides a company's workers with retirement savings through their investment in their employee stock. I have been stunned at the stories I have heard about people who have what one would think unexceptional jobs, who through this mechanism have been able to retire with significant savings as a result. Now, by giving employees skin in the game, the ESOP structure produces employees that are more likely to set aside money for retirement. They can retire earlier and worry less about retirement income. And the companies that use this mechanism are fundamentally different. We've seen in times of economic strife, employee ESOP-owned companies are more generous with their employees. They are slower to lay people off. They bring them back. And in fact, they are more profitable. It is an encouraging mechanism that I think epitomizes the best of the American ingenuity and the creation of wealth. This is a structure that works, and one is being expanded by this legislation. And by allowing for a deferral of gain on a small amount of the proceeds of sales of employer stock to an ESOP, there will be even more companies incented to sell stock to ESOPs, promoting and expanding this innovative model. I am honored to support this legislation. I hope that we'll be able to promote greater awareness and understanding of this powerful model, and this is an important step forward. Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Virginia reserves his time. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, it's now my privilege. I yield 5 minutes to the gentlelady from North Carolina, our great Republican leader, Mrs. Fox.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Georgia for yielding me time. H.R. 2954 includes the text of the RISE Act, a bill that I'm proud to lead with Chairman Scott of the Education and Labor Committee. This bill was born out of true bipartisan collaboration, and I'm pleased at the progress we've made with our colleagues across the aisle. Hardworking Americans deserve the opportunity to save for a secure future, yet too many workers aren't putting anything towards their retirement nest egg. By removing the red tape tying up job creators and providing incentives for workers to save more, this legislation will strengthen and modernize America's retirement system so our nation's workers, retirees, and employers are better served. It truly is a much-needed step in the right direction. Practical solutions like the RISE Act and H.R. 2954 are a win for job creators, workers, and our nation's economic future. I urge my colleagues to vote yes. And Madam Speaker, I rise to inquire if the distinguished chairman of the Education and Labor Committee would be willing to engage in a colloquy with me about the matter of furnishing paper ERISA disclosures to participants and beneficiaries. I yield to the chairman.
The gentleman from Virginia.
Madam Speaker, I'd be happy to enter into a colloquy with my colleague.
Reclaiming my time, I thank the chairman. Madam Speaker, the underlying bill includes an imperfect provision requiring retirement plans to provide a paper statement annually. The bill also directs the Department of Labor to revise its 2002 and 2020 safe harbor regulations to conform with this requirement. While I support the bill, I have serious concerns about this blunt provision, which would undermine DOL's 2002 and 2020 e-delivery safe harbor regulations. Participants and plans have been relying on the 2002 safe harbor for nearly 20 years. The Committee on Education and Labor has dedicated considerable time to this issue. I do not consider this a settled matter, and I'll continue to engage with my House and Senate colleagues to find a workable solution that simplifies and modernizes the disclosure requirements for retirement plans. I yield to the chairman of the committee.
Madam Speaker, I thank the ranking member for yielding to me and for her comments. It is my understanding that our staffs will continue their efforts along with their Senate counterparts to try to find a path forward on this issue that balances the interests of plan sponsors and the retirement plan participants. I yield back to the ranking member.
Madam Speaker, reclaiming my time, I thank the chairman for his willingness to continue working on this issue together. Again, I urge a yes vote on the bill, and I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Georgia reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman wishes to reserve. The gentleman's time is reserved from Georgia. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the chair of the Subcommittee on Civil Rights of the Ed and Labor Committee, the gentlelady from Oregon, Ms. Bonamici.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to Chairman Scott for yielding and for your leadership on this and so many important issues in the Education and Labor Committee. I rise in strong support of the Securing a Strong Retirement Act of 2022, or Secure Act 2.0, which makes important and bipartisan improvements that will improve enrollment in and access to retirement savings plans. As employers have shifted from pension plans to retirement plans, such as 401ks, workers have increasingly become responsible for tracking, managing, and consolidating their retirement accounts when they change jobs. There is no standard way for workers to consolidate their accounts, and many workers actually lose track of their hard-earned investments. According to a Government Accountability Office report, about 25 million people changed jobs between 2004 and 2014 and left one or more retirement accounts behind. This problem is only expected to grow as young workers transition between jobs at greater rates than previous generations. The Secure Act 2.0 includes provisions from my Retirement Savings Lost and Found Act, which will help address the challenge of tracking retirement savings. My bill creates a national lost and found registry for retirement accounts housed at the Department of Labor. The Lost and Found Registry will provide workers with a centralized way to track their retirement accounts, and also it will help workers claim their hard-earned retirement funds regardless of how often they transition from job to job. I strongly support the common sense improvements in the Secure Act 2.0, including the creation of a retirement savings lost and found registry, which will help working families retire with dignity. I urge all of my colleagues to vote in favor of passage of this important legislation, and I yield back the balance of my
Gentlewoman
time.
yields back. The gentleman from Virginia reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, could I inquire if the gentleman from Virginia is ready to close?
Madam Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The goal of every American is to retire with security and dignity. The RISE Act and H.R. 2954 will help workers do just that. This bill will expand the availability of private retirement programs to more Americans. Neither small businesses nor nonprofits and educational institutions should be prohibited from accessing the benefits offered to larger retirement plans. Building on the success of the Secure Act of 2019, this legislation cuts red tape, streamlines reporting and disclosure requirements, and provides American workers more opportunities to begin saving for a secure retirement. I thank the chairman and our Republican leader for their commitment to bipartisanship and for defending the committee's important jurisdiction over retirement issues in this bill. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of H.R. 2954, and I yield the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Georgia yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself the balance of the time.
Gentleman from Virginia.
Madam Speaker, as my colleagues have said, the bill makes meaningful and sensible improvements to America's retirement system. They'll help workers, retirees, and employers. I want to again congratulate my Education and Labor Committee colleagues who have authored provisions in this bill. And I want to recognize and thank the ranking member of the Committee on Education and Labor, Dr. Fox, and her staff for their partnership and work on this important bill with my staff, which includes Kevin McDermott, Richard Miller, Daniel Foster, and Eli Hovland, who have worked hard on this bill from start to finish. Madam Speaker, I urge all members to support the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia yields back the balance of his time. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 2954 as amended? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the gentleman from Georgia is recognized. For what purpose?
Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote.